Tech stocks are taking an absolute beating today after some poor guidance from Netflix and Tesla. We're going to dive into that and more on today's show. Before we get going, hit that like button, subscribe to our channel. Nothing Kevin or I say is financial advice. We are not financial advisors. We're a few guys who love following the markets. So please do your own research before making any buys or sells. Kevin, we were talking yesterday that it seemed like the upside on a lot of these tech stocks was priced in heading into the Netflix and Tesla earnings, and that is playing out as we are looking at the markets closing, on this Thursday, 1 hour left in the trading day. At this moment in time, Tesla is down just over 9%, $26 a share down. Netflix is down almost $40 a share, which is about 8.28%. We joke sometimes about the markets. It doesn't move a lot, but that is moving in a big way. Oh, yeah. So very rough day here for the tech stocks. What are you looking at from the earnings? We'll get into some of the details in a second and what that could mean for the tech earnings that are coming out next week.
Yeah, I mean, this is a good punch in the mouth that I think a lot of these tech stocks needed, right? If I was in some of these other ones, maybe, might be a little bit scared if I'm a shareholder. Maybe, I'm not saying insider trading, but if I was a Microsoft and I knew I was had, an entire market that's propped up on bullshit, maybe sell. I'm not saying that's the right thing to do, but I definitely think that it's definitely putting a little bit of fear into people who are holding some of those stocks, because even though Tesla kind of came back and, met expectations in some regards, still seeing, a pretty good downside risk right now, right? It came down a good amount. So yeah, I think this is definitely, a precursor to what we could potentially see next week. So I'm not necessarily expecting it to be, such a landslide for every single one. I think Nvidia's been doing some pretty good things, but then again, we also saw Nvidia had some issues with Tesla too recently. So be really interesting to see how this play out.
What I think is happening, so let's get into some of the numbers real quick.
Yeah.
Tesla for Q2 of this year reported all-time high revenue, and what we discussed yesterday was the margins and how big of a hit margins are taking. Randy, good to see you. Mr. House, Ace, as always, it's a pleasure. Good to have you guys here. But, we discussed yesterday that the margins are being cut back. Whether it's the fact that with Tesla, they've cut prices a bit to help with demand. They had to put all this money into, their factories and their plants and everything. And then we also saw in yesterday's earnings that research and development costs went up significantly in Q2. That came in at $943 million in R&D costs. That's up from $771 million in Q1, and that's mainly due to the fact that they are being, trying to be like at the quote from their team, at the forefront of AI development, and that is why we're seeing a lot of these AI-driven stocks taking a big hit today. We see Nvidia down 3.5%. We're looking at Microsoft down 2.3%, Meta down 3.75%. So we're seeing that, the AI stuff is great, and in the future it's going to be huge. But right now, people are like, oh shit, we haven't calculated that into the cost and what that is going to do to the bottom line for a lot of these companies, as they're still in the early stages of developing it and implementing it. So there has been kind of like this cascade of panic within the rest of the tech industry. Meanwhile, we're seeing the Dow having another strong day, up 200 points. It's, people are getting defensive, right? Like there's very little green on the board. But one green that's sticking out to me is Walmart. And we talked about this before. When people are switching defensive, they want to go to areas that are going to be low cost for consumers, where they're not going to be too concerned about discretionary spending. And one of those is Walmart, up, about 1.7% today, hitting its stride here, having a solid day. So it's really nasty for tech. Real quick on the Netflix front, they blew out expectations as far as new subscribers went. Yeah. 5.9 million new subscribers in Q2, but revenue somehow came in under estimates. And that's because they were spending a lot of money. Granted, they're profitable. Most of the other streaming services aren't profitable. The one positive guidance they said was that they're expecting cash flow to increase this year from 3.5 to 5 billion, due primarily to the fact that there's this writer and actor strike going on in Hollywood. So they're not going to have as much expenses there, but it's pretty nasty for tech. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a little bounce back tomorrow. I don't know how it's going to close out today. But at the same time, this could kind of be the first realization of, okay, we've been saying for a while, the markets are out over their skis. And I think a lot of other people are starting to realize that too.
100%. And yeah, I think my my forecast for the most part is that we're looking towards like post-September, October, November for being some of the brutal moves. I mean, I could be dead wrong. This could go downhill to overnight, right? Really just have to wait and see. But I think that what we're seeing right now is a bit of a correction. This might be people who are like, okay, the market's done a pretty damn good job so far. Maybe take a little bit of profit off here, and then maybe the markets rally a little bit more and trying to correct the correction that's coming down. But for the most part, I think I think the market is out over their skis, and we're extremely, starting to see some of these stocks definitely impact other stocks. Like here, Ace said, Nvidia is just way too overpriced. It's priced at absolute perfection. And we also saw the news today that Tesla wanted to start using Nvidia chips, right? And the only issue is that they're not able to produce as many as Tesla needs. So there's also other things that we're starting to see, that there are some cracks in the foundation for a lot of these things that are going up. Maybe this reality is very much needed, but I don't necessarily see this as, much more room to the upside. And that's just me being reasonable about this.
Dude, if you look at the stochastic RSI for Tesla and Netflix on the weekly and monthly, they're still incredibly overbought. Yeah. So like maybe we see a slight bounce tomorrow, like a 1 or 2% bounce, because it is moving towards oversold on the daily, but we're still in for a lot more red in the weeks and months ahead.
Let's pull this up real quick. I just want to look at the stochastic RSIs on the monthly for these. I'll look at Netflix first. So last time Netflix was completely overbought was back in November of 2021, and it came all the way down from, what is this, 688 all the way down to like 153-ish around there. So that's a pretty good move to the downside, right? That's from here all the way down here. That's about 75% down or so. So that's the last time it was overbought on the monthly. The monthly obviously is going to give you the best look on where the macro is going. Again, we can see that there is bearish divergence coming down here as the price is going up. Not a great sign, right? Now let's look at Tesla. Tesla is probably in a similar situation, I would assume. But so the last time that Tesla was overbought is actually back here in February of 2021. And as it came down, it actually went up, but I'm not too surprised by that. That's bull market and tons of money coming in. But for the most part, it's been oversold for a long time. And Tesla is actually going towards the overbought. So definitely kind of an interesting dynamic here. I still think that this is part of one larger structure. But if we look on the weekly too, for Tesla, like extremely overbought, right? So I have to keep an eye on that. But I think this is a pretty clear and cut picture for what's happening. It's a correction. It's a correction that's part of a larger move. And we're seeing that with Netflix. Netflix is arguably putting in the same type of structure. Maybe this one's a little bit bigger. But yeah, so a lot of these things will break. And I think that we are getting to the point where it's like, okay, this part of the correction is done with. Now it's time to finalize, the final waves that lead us into the end of the bear market. Not saying that's going to happen right away, but it's just at a point where the market is completely overpriced. There is a lot more money to be made on the downside rather than the upside. I don't think you just can rely on people still piling in money, because at this point it's just retail FOMOing in, and then any money managers that are pretty much just like, oh, we're getting bitched at over here, so let's just throw in the last bit so we don't get fucked. But you got to get fucked because you listen to your customers who are retail.
So next week is a big one for tech earnings. We have Amazon, Meta, Google, Microsoft. And that's, we're seeing those companies today take a pretty big hit. I mean, Amazon down over 4%. Yeah. Google down about 2.8. All of these companies that are reporting next week, people are not like, oh shit, we got to price this in. We over expected heading into earnings. Will it, the markets overreact, right? Market participants are emotional, like overly emotional at times. The same way that we saw people a week ago, 2 weeks ago, calling for Tesla to go to $800 this year. Because I did in fact see that. I saw people on Twitter hosting Twitter spaces like, here's why Tesla is going to 3x from this point through the end of the year.
Yep.
People also can't overreact to the downside. So I'm not saying you should buy any of this stuff now, but I wouldn't be shocked if we saw maybe, the market getting a little too scared heading into some of the earnings next week, because not every company, just because they're in, the same sector, they're not going to have the exact same results, right? So just something to keep in mind if you are kind of panicking on some of these right now. Like, take a long-term perspective, but also remember that just because Netflix and Tesla are getting the shit beat out of them today doesn't mean that that's going to happen to Microsoft and Amazon next week when they report earnings. They might get the shit kicked out of them for a completely different reason.
Exactly. That's a great point to bring up. I'm going to actually share my screen for a second. I want to pull up this thing I was looking at last night. This is corporate profits. This is from the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis. I tweeted about this last night, but this is corporate profits for the past few quarters. We can see, obviously, the annual, it's up 6.6%. 2021, it was up 22.6%. Wonder why it's up in 2021. Maybe it's because we printed so much fucking money, right? And obviously, it's decreasing a little bit. But if we look at the quarters from Q4 of 2022 and then Q1 of 2023, and these are the third revisions from these numbers, we can see that there is a decline in profits from corporate profits, right? So, in my opinion, I don't think these companies are making as much money as they are, maybe earnings are suggesting. Obviously, they're making money, right? But the thing is, I tweeted about this last night. It's really easy to beat expectations. I believe it's like 60 to 70% or so. It might even be a little bit more than that. Beat profits most of the time, right? You kind of set yourself up for success when you're coming up with some of these estimations. So obviously, looking at this is probably more of a better metric, in my opinion, for keeping an eye on what the economy is actually doing. Because 2 negative quarters is pretty bad. I'd like to see what Q2 provides. Again, we're going to get those in a few weeks, probably once we get all the corporate earnings done. Then obviously that'll be revised all the way till the end of the start of Q4. But for the most part, this is going to be one thing I'm keeping an eye on. I think everyone should be keeping an eye on, because if this goes negative for a third month in a row, what the fuck are we doing? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're overbought and, corporate profits are going down. It's not a good look in any way. And I also want to bring up one other thing. What the hell happened to Disney, dude? Have you been keeping an eye on Disney?
I have not been. It's taken a big hit over the last,
dude,
this
it's at
year.
the COVID lows.
Yeah.
I just want to show people this because this is insane to me. Obviously, Bob Iger's trying to sell the company, he's trying to get rid of FX, ABC, all that shit. But this is right here is March 2020, and this is where we are right now. We are, $7 above where the COVID lows were. What happens if this goes tits up like the entire market does? What happens to Disney? And remember, they were buying IP for 10 years. They were a company that just kept on, obviously spending more than they probably should have. Now we're seeing, lines at Disneyland and all these other, places that Disney owns absolutely shrinking. No one's willing to spend money at these, institutions, at these parks. I don't know what the numbers are on their streaming services, but this is not.
They're not profitable yet.
No, they're not profitable at all. And they have too much IP and they put in too much money into a lot of these productions. And unfortunately, they rely heavily on a lot of the stuff.
I don't want to get too far off the tracks here, but let me just say something. I'm a big Marvel guy. I like Marvel movies, okay?
Yeah.
Make fun of me if you want. Ever since they started with the Disney Plus and like all the shows and putting out 3 or 4 movies a year, it has gone to absolute shit. Like when the quantity has gone up, the quality has taken a big old hit. So, I'm not watching. I haven't gone to see a Marvel movie in theaters in a long, long time. Just because they've been garbage lately. So what has Bob Iger really done for them? Like, has he, like they brought him back on, and there was a spike up in the price when he came back, but ever since then, it's just been they've just been bleeding out. And they do have arguably like some of the strongest IP in the world, right? Get someone who can right the ship. Like, they have so much money. Like, find the right person, back up the fucking Brinks truck, and get this shit figured out. Like, get the fucking, poach someone from Netflix if you have to come get your streaming service sorted out. But just letting it bleed out this way, I mean, that chart, if you look, it was, $200 a share 2 years ago, and now it's down to 86.5. Like, that's fucking terrible. What are we doing?
Yeah, man.
What are we doing?
Hasn't really even seen that much of a bounce yet either. So that's the scary part too, right? Everything else has pretty much seen a bounce in this market. This has not seen the bounce significant of what, some of these other stocks are doing. There's even some stocks that are putting in all-time highs that shouldn't be right now, just because they're running away with the S&P and, the Nasdaq. And this thing, this is a behemoth.
Disney, they got their head shoved too far up their ass.
Yes,
they started this whole fight with DeSantis down in Florida. Yep. Everything is too expensive. Like, the thought of taking my kid to Disney World, not just from like how crowded it would be, but the money just gives me, like, that's why I don't have any hair. It's all gone because I thought about taking my kid to Disney. All my hair fell out. Like, it's fucking terrible. Like, fuck that shit. I don't want to go. Like, spend $500 a night for a shit hotel and like $800 per person to go to the parks for a few days, like, and $25 for a fucking corn dog that some dipshit probably dropped on the ground.
Hey, let's
Like,
get
fuck
this
all
straight.
that noise.
It's corn dog and apples for $27.95. Let's get our numbers here straight, all right? And I definitely did pay that one time I went to Disneyland. I said, okay, next time I'll just starve. But yeah, absolutely. And what was the best part? I like those. I think it was sunblock. I walked into Disneyland and I didn't bring any sunblock. I tried to buy some and it was like $24. I'm like, nope, cancer's fine. I'll take that for
I'll
50
take
bucks.
skin cancer. I'm not going to spend 20. And it was like that much sunblock as well, like just enough.
Exactly. So Disney, get fucked.
Randy, I don't know. I'm making up numbers, but I mean, $800 per person for like 5 days is honestly probably on the cheap side. It's probably more than that. But like we've been saying for a while, discretionary spending is going down.
Yep.
Well, guess what? A trip to fucking Disney World or Disneyland is going to be a lot less achievable for the majority of people. It's already not achievable for, the people in the lower class, unfortunately. But even middle class families are going to be like, nope, we can't go to Disney World anymore because it is $10,000 for a family trip. That is not feasible.
Not at all. So yeah, Disney looks like shit, smells like shit. Sorry about that, Mickey Mouse, you're done for. But yeah, so that's just one thing I really wanted to bring up because we were talking about the streaming wars and stuff like that. With like, obviously, that's going to affect Hulu. They're also screwed too because they have so much of an impact or exposure to the SAG and Writers Guild of America, right? All those people those are such unionized sets to the point where it's like, okay, maybe you guys will get Secret Invasion or Part 2 in fucking 5 years once this writer strike's over. But as of right now, nah, sorry, you're stuck with She-Hulk. So yeah, that's all I got to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm blanking on his name, but the guy who plays the Hulk, I saw him out there picketing as
Ruffalo.
well. Like, yeah, Ruffalo was picketing. This shit ain't ending anytime soon.
No.
Did you? I forget what studio it was, but apparently one of the studios like cut a bunch of the trees that were providing shade for the strikers. But then it comes out that those trees were not owned by that studio. They're owned by the city of LA. So the city of LA is going to come down on them for that. There's like all this drama going on. It's fucking ridiculous. What a time to be alive. Okay, I think we spent way too much time on Disney right there, considering that wasn't even a focus today. But you know what? We went off on a nice rant. I think we got a few nice sound bits there that we can use. So let's keep it moving. Crypto has been. It took a little bit of a run up earlier in the day, and it's pulled back a little bit now. I still see that Link is having a pretty strong day. A nice green candle there on the daily and the weekly, up a little over 18%. That's pretty nuts. What is catching your eye? I see BTC dominance is back under 50 with some of the alts having a decent day and Bitcoin back under 30K. Let's keep this part of it pretty simple. Let's go to the high level view here, just so you don't confuse me too much.
No worries. We're going to look at Bitcoin today because that's obviously the one that took a pretty good dump today. It's down $207 from the open. It's not necessarily a bad thing. I think that Bitcoin is going somewhere where a lot of people expect to go a lot lower. I don't anticipate it to go too low. I'm still very optimistic that we're going to hit that 34, 35K. And one of the main reasons for that for me is that a lot of people are obviously trying to price in everything right now. So obviously, a push up there seems like it'd be, what everyone wants because that's the trend for the time being. However, everyone's going to start shorting, and when shorts pile in, then guess what? Price is going to push up. But what I'm seeing here right now is this is the hourly for Bitcoin. We're trading within this parallel channel still. I did adjust it a little bit because I think prior to this, I was maybe this line was down here and we were trading it within this, but we'll just keep this right here. I think this is also extremely weak parallel channel. Obviously we're going lower, but it's slowly. It's almost like a continuation pattern to the side. But the main thing that we need to see is on the daily. Daily has all the answers, in my opinion. And if we are not able to hold this level, then we're definitely going to go a lot lower. This 50 moving average, it's been creeping up. It's about $100 higher than where it was 2 days ago, and we're slowly getting to it. I think if we find some support on this daily 50 moving average, then there's a good chance that we're going to start to push to the upside. That would also hurt a lot of people because I think a lot of people, if we start going below this, are going to start piling in shorts. But, all we need to do is close above the 50 moving average and we're going to be, most likely moving up again. So definitely keep an eye on that. I also think that we're oversold on the stochastic RSI, and this consolidation period is just kind of, weak. And this is also affecting Bitcoin dominance because we're seeing a lot of alts, like obviously Link today. XRP has been kicking ass lately, but for the most part, Bitcoin dominance hasn't been doing much. It's just been kind of slowly bleeding out. Still, 49% is nothing to be shameful of. I think that we are going to see a pretty good resurgence. Again, just needs a bit of a consolidation period. We're going to get that, and once Bitcoin starts to move, I think you're going to start seeing the dominance of that absolutely fly with it. We're seeing that XRP dominance actually came down a little bit today. We're at 3.59. Where's this money coming from? Likely it's going to USDT, right? USDT is having a pretty good day. Obviously, compared to where it was a few days ago. Back in Friday last week, it was down all the way to 6.75. Today, we're at 7.22. I want to get above 7.3% market cap. That just seems to be a good level if we look at that on the macro, weekly and monthly. So if the cash is flowing in here, that means that people are taking profits somewhere else. Right now, it seems like most people are taking profits from XRP. So I'm glad to see XRP dominance going down a little bit. I'm glad to see it going to USDT. I want to pull up a link because this is just absolutely, I didn't wake up today expecting fucking Link to be as high as it was. Not saying that it is high relative to where it once was, but, it's been kind of a weird chart for Link. So I'll pull up the weekly. And you can see how low we are currently, right? This is absolutely just sideways consolidation. It's broke up a couple of times. We went to about $9.50 one time, currently at $8.19. Again, that's a lower high still, and we're seeing on the weekly that we're almost overbought for Link. So I wouldn't anticipate there being, unless there's some massive manipulation, price shooting up. I also want to see on the daily, we're completely overbought after today, right? This is a pretty good move to close out this overbought position. And what I'm seeing here is a three-wave move. Even though there's 5 waves here and there's 5 waves here, we get 3 waves in the middle, which is you can't really see unless you look at the hourly pattern. This is a correction pattern. I think that we are going to come down. I think a lot of things are overbought in the alt market. We're seeing a little bit of relief with Bitcoin dominance going down, XRP dominance go down. So, people are probably just moving money into something else. Once everyone gets extremely bullish on something, though, we tend to see it get rejected, right? So we got a pretty good move up here on the monthly, and this monthly move is pretty much the past 2 weeks. So nothing too crazy with Link. I think that we are going to see some retracement, but the problem right now is that everyone's excited about this, and then once everyone gets excited about it, that's when we start to see the liquidity hunters come out, and they start to play the market back and forth until everyone gets out of their positions, and then they drive it to where most of the liquidity is. And if that's with Bitcoin up to 34, 35K, that means dominance goes up. Trading pairs between Bitcoin and Link are going to go down. Link's going to eventually bleed out along with other alts. So it's a mad triangle, love triangle, whatever we're doing with all these altcoins, Bitcoin, US, like stable coins. It matters where the money's flowing to. And right now it seems like a little bit of money's flowing into Link. A lot of money was flowing into XRP. Everything's kind of flowing out of Bitcoin right now. But for the most part, I think that we are still seeing some good structures for downside eventually. Let me just delete this. A lot of alts are still overbought, in my opinion, so we'll see how that plays out. But I do want to look at the total 3 market cap. Once again, this is everything except for Bitcoin and Ethereum. We're still in this parallel channel, right? We just keep finding rejection at this top of this channel. And, we got a pretty good red day today. We're down about $1.043 billion. And we're finding some relative support in the daily on this 200 EMA. I think that eventually we are going to break down because we still are fairly not overbought, but we are pretty high on the stochastic RSI. This bottom channel, in my opinion, has to be tested at some point. And I think when we test that channel, it's likely because something bad is going to happen in the space. I still think that we have the possibility of going under 300 billion. I haven't given up on that, not even a single bit. I think it's just waiting for this structure to play out. And once it's done, it's going to be a pretty good move to the downside. We can see Solana already on the move to the downside. I tweeted about this a few days ago. Saw that this was a 3-way move, this correction period right here that played out since December, January of this year. And now I think this is the end of the structure. I think that we are going to start seeing some of these waves come down. And this could play out until the end of the year too, right? Obviously, this is a huge 7-month span that we saw this Solana pretty much play out to where it got to about $32. I think that it's very possible that we see this play out until maybe December, January, February of next year before we find the bottom. So I'm not expecting everything to come crashing down right away. Obviously, there's going to be corrections and then moves in the way of the trend. I just don't necessarily see it coming down all at one time. However, I do think that there are some things that can definitely come down all at one time, and I think you all know what that is. That is BNB. But again, this is the one thing I do want to bring up with BNB, because I'm not necessarily saying that Binance is collapsing, going to be the bottom of the bear market. No, I think there's bigger problems in Binance.
Do you have
right now.
Be honest with me?
Yeah.
Do you have a dartboard by your desk with a picture of CZ on it? Like Do you just sit there
A
all day
dartboard and just like throw a
throwing
dart.
darts at CZ's face? Like that's the vibe I'm getting from you.
No,
Like,
I
are we
gotta,
gonna look at is this Billy Madison style, like Steve Buscemi once BNB crashes, you're gonna sit back, put the lipstick
lipstick
on, and
on.
then like cross his name off? Is that what we're seeing happen here?
I will say I do love that part of that movie. That's a great scene. But no, it's I think this is just I don't like that CZ is always on Twitter. He's on Twitter more than I, and that's a problem, especially if you're running one of the world's largest crypto exchanges. And now you have I forget who it was. I think it's Kathy. She works for BNB. She's pretty much fighting with people too, saying, "Oh, this guy's look at this guy who's spreading the FUD." It's like, come on, man. You know, I think SBF had a little bit more class at this point. But yeah, it's just kind of BS right now. I think with BNB, obviously, I saw True USD minted like what was it, like $65 million today. So I'm like, all right, fuck, what are we doing here? So again, I'm looking at all this shit, and it's like this needs to break down. We broke from this parallel channel. We're in another parallel channel just right under it. It's gonna break. I don't necessarily think this is going to be the end of the bear market, though. That's my biggest conviction. But I think that if Binance collapses, I think it makes sense that Bitcoin goes down to like that 20K level again. But I think that there are bigger fish in the entire macroeconomic outlook, both in TradFi and crypto, that could potentially bring us down way lower for Bitcoin. Like, I'll be honest with you, my target for Bitcoin is $9,700. That's sub 10. I think it's going to get a wick down there, and that's mainly because I think we're filling a lot of these futures gaps, right? That's the lowest one I think that we'll hit. I think that we're going to go through the one that's at like 2220 or something like that, and then obviously we have one at 34, 35. But I think that once this structure plays out, we're done with this B wave. I think we're going to go straight down, and we're going to start targeting those. But I do think that there is something coming, and I don't know if it's going to be inflation spiking again. So we're going to have rates extremely high for a period of time. I don't know if it's the housing market, just residential properties absolutely collapsing. I don't know if it's smaller banks. I think it's definitely going to end with credit. I think that there's going to be a huge credit event coming to the point where it's like, all right, now it's game over for everyone.
Listen, defaults are going up, whether
Bankruptcies are up.
Bankruptcies are up. Like it's going to get
all
ugly, and there really isn't a whole lot that the Fed can or will do. Like, could they print more money? I mean, I guess they can always print more money. The question is, will they? And I don't really know how bad it's going to get or how bad it would need to get for them to step in again. But I hope we don't get to that point. I'm not as bearish as you. If Bitcoin gets sub 10K, I don't think I'll be able to buy any because I'll probably have put all the capital I have into it before then, because I'm still, I'll start DCAing around like 20K because I do think we'll get there. But hey, maybe we do get to 10, like sub 10, and you make the buy of a lifetime, and a few years from now, you're my boss and I have to work for you. Who knows?
Now we'll both be retired at that point, and we will have taught everyone on this channel how to read the charts and scoop through the bullshit.
God willing. God willing. All right, we are going to wrap it up there. We appreciate everybody for joining us today. This was a fun one. I had a great time. We'll be back tomorrow, not the same time. However, I'm traveling, so we're recording early, and then we'll post it. We'll figure something out for Monday as well. But we appreciate you guys so much. If you have not yet, hit those buttons down below. A like, a comment, subscribe, share us out on social media. All of that means a ton to Kevin and I. Mr. House, Ace, Randy, thank you guys so much for being here. I know we had a couple other people who were watching too, who remained nameless. Thank you for watching as well. Have an awesome rest of your day, everybody. We will see you next time.
Take care, everyone.